The steady beep of medical equipment filled the small examination room at Mercy General Hospital in Cincinnati, Ohio, as 18-year-old Linda Kerrigan sat motionless on the paper-covered bed. Her mother, Martha, stood by her side, concern etched across her face as they waited for the doctor to return with the test results. The clock on the wall seemed to tick slower with each passing second. Dr. Reynolds entered, her expression professional yet gentle as she held a manila folder. "Linda, Mrs. Kerrigan, please have a seat." The mother and daughter exchanged worried glances before sitting down. The doctor cleared her throat, choosing her words carefully. "Linda, we found the cause of your recent symptoms, the nausea, the fatigue, the missed periods." Martha gripped her daughter's hand tighter, her heart racing as she anticipated what would come next. Linda's face remained frozen, her eyes fixed on a spot on the floor. The tension in the room grew thick enough to cut with a knife. "Linda, you're approximately 2 months pregnant." The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. Martha's grip on her daughter's hand loosened as shock took over. Her mind raced through calculations. Linda had just turned 18 2 days ago. The implications hit her like a physical blow. This can't be right," Martha whispered, her voice trembling. "She's supposed to start college next month. She has a full scholarship." The doctor maintained her composed demeanor as she continued explaining the situation, but Martha could barely hear over the rushing sound in her ears. Linda hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, her face pale and drawn. Tears began rolling down her cheeks silently. The scholarship letter Martha had proudly displayed on their refrigerator flashed through her mind, her daughter's ticket to a better life seemingly crumbling before her eyes. Before we continue with this shocking story of trust, betrayal, and the lengths a mother will go to protect her child, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring these important, real-life stories to light. Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts on Martha's situation. What would you do if you were in her shoes? Click that notification bell to ensure you don't miss any updates on this gripping story. Now let's return to Martha and Linda's life-changing moment at Mercy General Hospital. Martha Kerrigan learned about sacrifice the day she found herself alone at 20, holding a newborn Linda in her arms. Her then-boyfriend had vanished at the first mention of pregnancy, leaving her to navigate the challenges of motherhood solo. She dropped out of nursing school, trading her dreams of medical scrubs for a waitress uniform at 2 different diners. For 5 years straight, Martha worked double shifts, her mother watching Linda during the day while she pushed through exhaustion. Every spare dollar went into a savings account for Linda's education. At night, she'd study for her GED, determined to show her daughter that circumstances don't define destiny. By the time Linda turned 6, Martha had earned her high school diploma and secured a position as a medical billing specialist at Mercy General Hospital. The tiny apartment they shared above Mrs. Tatiana's Chinese restaurant became a sanctuary of bedtime stories and homework sessions. Martha skipped new clothes, restaurant meals, and social outings, choosing instead to invest in Linda's future. She attended every parent-teacher conference in her work uniform, pride swelling in her chest as teachers praised her daughter's intelligence and dedication. Through determination and careful budgeting, Martha managed to move them to a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a better school district by Linda's 10th birthday. She remembered standing in their new living room, watching Linda twirl with excitement, knowing every overtime shift had been worth it. Nelson Taylor entered their lives like a gentle summer breeze, starting as the friendly IT consultant at Mercy General, who always fixed Martha's computer issues with a warm smile. Their first conversation stretched beyond technical problems into shared laughs over hospital cafeteria coffee. His kind eyes and patient demeanor drew Martha in, but it was his genuine interest in Linda's science fair project that truly caught her attention. Unlike other men who'd shown interest over the years, Nelson never rushed. He understood Martha's protective nature and spent 6 months just being a friend before asking her on their first official date. He brought board games instead of flowers, joining their Friday night tradition rather than trying to create separate romantic moments. Linda, then 8, took to him immediately, especially when he helped her build her first computer from spare parts. For 10 years, Nelson became their rock. He was there for every milestone. Linda's middle school graduation, Martha's promotion to department supervisor, their first real family vacation to Disney World. He moved in with them after 5 years of dating, transforming their apartment with his handyman skills and filling their weekends with impromptu cooking lessons and movie marathons. Martha finally allowed herself to believe in second chances, watching how Nelson treated Linda like his own daughter. Never trying to replace her absent father, but instead creating his own special bond with her. Linda Kerrigan emerged as one of Cincinnati West High School's brightest stars, maintaining a perfect 4.0 GPA while leading both the robotics club and debate team. Her teachers often told Martha that Linda possessed a rare combination of natural talent and relentless work ethic. She spent weekends volunteering at Mercy General's pediatric ward, inspired by the same passion for healthcare that had once driven her mother's nursing dreams. Her hard work paid off spectacularly when the acceptance letter from Johns Hopkins University arrived, accompanied by a full pre-med scholarship. The kitchen erupted in joyful tears that evening as Linda shared her plans to become a pediatric surgeon. Her application essay, detailing how watching her mother's sacrifice and dedication shaped her drive to help others, had impressed the scholarship committee so much they quoted it in their acceptance letter. Martha and Nelson had already started planning for the big move to Baltimore, with Nelson using his IT connections to find Linda a safe apartment near campus. Everything seemed set for Linda to start her journey that fall, carrying forward her mother's deferred medical dreams with renewed purpose. To neighbors and friends, the Kerrigan household represented the perfect modern family. Every Sunday morning began with Nelson's famous blueberry pancakes, the kitchen filled with easy laughter and playful banter. Martha would beam with pride watching Linda and Nelson huddle over computer parts or engage in intense chess matches, their shared interests bridging any gaps that might exist between stepfather and daughter. Their apartment became the gathering spot for Linda's study groups, with Martha providing snacks while Nelson offered tech support for research projects. Holiday traditions blended seamlessly. Nelson's family recipe for Christmas sugar cookies merged with Martha's traditional Thanksgiving casseroles. Family game nights grew more competitive as Linda matched her strategic skills against Nelson's experience, while Martha played referee and photographer, capturing their mock serious expressions. Even their arguments seemed healthy, always ending in reasonable compromises and stronger understanding. Martha often thanked her lucky stars for this second chance at happiness, watching her daughter thrive under the stable, loving presence of a father figure who seemed to genuinely care about their well-being. Everything appeared picture-perfect, until that fateful day at Mercy General Hospital. The drive home from Mercy General Hospital suffocated in silence, broken only by Linda's occasional sniffles from the back seat. As Martha pulled into their apartment complex parking lot, her knuckles white against the steering wheel, the questions she'd held back in the doctor's office began to surface. Inside. Now. Martha's voice carried a tremor she couldn't control. They climbed the stairs to their third-floor apartment, each step heavy with dread. Nelson looked up from his laptop at the kitchen table, his welcoming smile fading as he read the tension in their faces. "You're not going to believe this," Martha's voice cracked as she dropped her purse on the counter. "Tell him, Linda. Tell him what you did." Linda stood frozen, arms wrapped around herself, tears streaming down her face. "My daughter, my 18-year-old daughter, who's supposed to be starting pre-med at Johns Hopkins in 6 weeks, is 2 months pregnant." Nelson's laptop closed with a soft click. "What?" 2 months pregnant," Martha repeated, pacing the kitchen floor. "All that work, all those sacrifices, that full scholarship, gone. Just like that." She turned to Linda, who seemed to shrink under her gaze. "And she won't even tell me who the father is. Won't say a word about who did this." 10 years of overtime shifts, Martha's voice rose with each word. "Countless nights I stayed up helping you study. Every penny saved for your future." She yanked open the refrigerator, tearing down the Johns Hopkins acceptance letter, magneted there. "Do you think they'll still want you? A pregnant freshman in their medical program?" Linda sank into a kitchen chair, shoulders shaking. Mom, please. Please what? Martha slammed her palm against the counter, making both Linda and Nelson jump. Please understand how you threw everything away? Please help you fix this? You're barely 18. Her breathing came in sharp gasps as she gripped the counter edge. Was it someone from school? That boy from your study group? Or, her eyes narrowed suddenly, is it someone older? The color drained from Linda's face at the last question. Martha noticed the change, her maternal instincts firing warning signals. She moved closer to her daughter, voice dropping dangerously low. Linda, look at me right now. Is it someone older? Did someone take advantage of you? The silence that followed her question felt like acid in the air. Linda's eyes darted briefly toward Nelson before fixing back on the floor. It was a fraction of a second, but Martha caught it. Her heart stopped. Martha, honey, you need to take a breath. Nelson stood up slowly, moving toward her with his hands raised in a calming gesture. Your blood pressure. Remember what Dr. Reynolds said about stress. Don't you dare tell me to calm down. Martha stepped away from him, something unfamiliar flickering in her eyes as she watched his movement. My daughter's future is falling apart. No one's future is falling apart. Nelson kept his voice steady, measured. We can figure this out as a family. Maybe defer her admission for a year. A family? Martha's laugh held no humor. You want to talk about family? She turned back to Linda, who hadn't moved from her chair. Linda, baby, I'm going to ask you one more time, and I need you to be honest with me. Who was the father? Nelson stepped between them. Martha, look at me. You're scaring her. This isn't the way to handle. Stop protecting her. Martha's voice cracked. She needs to answer me. Give her space, Nelson pleaded, reaching for Martha's arm. Let's all take a moment to process this. We can discuss it when everyone's calmer. Linda's quiet sobs filled the kitchen as Nelson tried to guide Martha toward the living room. But Martha stood rigid, her eyes fixed on how her daughter couldn't look at either of them. If you're following this intense family drama, take a moment to pause with us. We'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Drop your country's flag in the comments below. Let's see how many different nations are connecting with Martha's story. Has someone in your family faced a similar betrayal? How did your community handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments, but remember to keep discussions respectful. This story touches on sensitive issues that affect families worldwide. Don't forget to hit that like button if you want to support more real-life stories like Martha's. Subscribe and turn on notifications to catch the next part of this shocking revelation. You won't believe what happens when Martha finally uncovers the truth. Now, let's return to that tense kitchen scene where Martha's worst fears are about to be confirmed. Linda's fingers twisted the hem of her shirt, a nervous habit from childhood. Mom, I can't tell you. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Each word seemed to physically pain her, shoulders hunching further with every syllable. Martha moved closer, but Linda flinched away, her chair scraping against the linoleum floor. The sound echoed through the kitchen like a warning bell. Nelson remained by the counter, unusually still, his usual problem-solving demeanor nowhere in sight. How many people know? Martha asked, struggling to keep her voice level. Does anyone at school know? Your friends? The father's family? Linda shook her head rapidly, tears spattering onto her twisted shirt. Nobody knows. Just us now. Her eyes darted toward the window, then the door, like a trapped animal seeking escape. The scholarship letter lay crumpled on the floor between them, its gold letterhead catching the afternoon light. Baby, please. Martha softened her tone, kneeling beside her daughter. Whatever it is, we can face it together, just like we always have. She reached for Linda's hand, but her daughter pulled away sharply, nearly toppling the chair. Enough. Martha pulled herself to full height, her nurturing tone hardening into steel. This stops right now. You have exactly 5 minutes to tell me who the father is, or you can pack your bags and leave with him. Martha, Nelson started, but she cut him off with a sharp gesture. 1 minute has passed, Linda. Martha's voice remained eerily controlled. 4 minutes left to explain how my college-bound daughter ended up pregnant. 4 minutes to tell me who's responsible. She began methodically opening and closing kitchen drawers, the sound punctuating each passing moment. Mom, please don't make me. 3 minutes. Martha slammed the last drawer shut, 3 minutes to explain why you're throwing away a full scholarship. 3 minutes to tell me why you're protecting someone who clearly doesn't deserve it. Linda pressed her palms against her eyes, shoulders shaking. The kitchen clock ticked mercilessly in the background. Nelson stood frozen by the counter, his usual intervention silenced by something that looked remarkably like fear. 2 minutes, Linda. Martha's hands gripped the back of a kitchen chair. Is it worth losing everything? Your home, your family, your future? All to protect someone who put you in this situation? Martha watched Nelson from the corner of her eye, noting details she'd never paid attention to before. His stillness felt wrong. He always moved, always tried to fix things, always had solutions. But now he stood rigid, hands deep in his pockets, eyes fixed on the floor tiles. The memory of Linda's earlier glance in his direction replayed in Martha's mind. 10 years of trust began to crack as she recalled small moments. Nelson helping Linda with late-night study sessions, their private jokes, the way he'd insisted on driving Linda to her weekend hospital volunteering shifts. 1 minute, Martha announced, but her focus had shifted. She noted how Nelson's jaw clenched at each word, how he seemed to be holding his breath. Linda's sobs had quieted to shallow gasps, but she kept looking at the space between Nelson and the door, as if measuring the distance. Martha's hand trembled as she reached for her phone. Something in her gut screamed that she already knew the answer, but her mind refused to form the thought. The apartment's familiar sounds took on sinister undertones. The hum of the refrigerator, the drip of the kitchen faucet, the distant traffic below their third-floor window. Each noise marked the dwindling seconds of Linda's final minute. Martha's phone felt heavy in her hand as she pulled up her contact list. The local police precinct number glowed on the screen, her thumb hovering over it. Summer afternoon light streamed through the kitchen window, casting 3 separate shadows across the linoleum: a mother, a daughter, and the man who'd lived in their home for a decade. 30 seconds, Linda. Martha's voice cracked on her daughter's name. The air grew thick with unspoken words and rising panic. Nelson shifted his weight, a subtle movement that drew both women's attention. Linda's breathing quickened, her knuckles white against the edge of the table. The kitchen clock's steady ticking filled the silence between heartbeats. Martha's finger rested on the phone's dial button as she counted down the final moments before their family shattered forever. Time's up. Martha's finger hovered over the dial button. Last chance, Linda. Linda lifted her tear-stained face, lips trembling. Her eyes locked with Nelson's for a split second before she whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom." "Sorry for what?" Martha's voice hardened. "Sorry for getting pregnant? Sorry for throwing away your scholarship? Or sorry for—" She caught that glance between them again, and her words died in her throat. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering on the linoleum. "It wasn't supposed to happen," Linda's words tumbled out in a rush. "We never meant to." "We?" Martha's hand flew to her mouth as realization dawned. She turned to Nelson, who had backed away from the counter, his face ashen. "Tell me she's not talking about you." The silence that followed was deafening. Nelson opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again, but no words came out. Linda's quiet yes shattered the last thread of doubt. Martha's legs gave way and she gripped the counter to stay upright. "How long?" she managed to choke out. But as she looked between them, her boyfriend of 10 years and her barely 18-year-old daughter, she knew she didn't want to hear the answer. "I was drunk," Nelson blurted out, his composure cracking. "It was a mistake, just one terrible mistake." His hands trembled as he reached toward Martha. "That night you were working the late shift. I'd had too much to drink, and I thought she was you." Martha recoiled from his touch. "You thought my teenage daughter was me?" Her voice rose with each word. "My child who grew up calling you Dad? It wasn't like that," Nelson stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "We were watching a movie. I'd had too many beers. The lights were off." "Stop." Martha slammed her hand against the counter. "You're standing in my kitchen, telling me you assaulted my daughter because you were drunk and confused?" No, that's not what happened." Nelson's eyes darted between Martha and the door. "Linda, tell her. Tell her it wasn't like that." Linda shrank further into her chair, arms wrapped protectively around her midsection. Nelson's desperate attempt to explain himself only made each word sound more damning. "I love you, Martha. We can work through this," he pleaded. "I'll get help. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." "Tell her everything, Nelson." Linda's voice emerged stronger, almost defiant. "Tell her about last year's homecoming night. Tell her about the college application celebrations. Tell her about every time you swore it would be the last time." Martha's head snapped toward her daughter. Last year? Homecoming? The dates aligned in her mind like falling dominoes. "Linda, you were 17. It started after my birthday last year." Linda's words came faster now, like a dam breaking. He said he'd help me get into Johns Hopkins. Said he knew people in admissions. Then after I got in, he said he'd tell you everything if I didn't." Her voice cracked. "If I didn't keep seeing him." The scholarship letter still lay crumpled on the floor between them. Martha stared at it, remembering how proud she'd been, how Nelson had insisted on framing Linda's acceptance letter. Every achievement of the past year suddenly took on a darker meaning. Martha's world tilted on its axis as memories rearranged themselves with brutal clarity. Nelson's insistence on driving Linda to weekend volunteering, the new computer for her college applications, his sudden interest in her study sessions, the late-night conversations she'd mistaken for paternal bonding. Her legs gave way completely, and she slid to the kitchen floor. 10 years of family photos stared down at her from the walls. Christmas mornings, birthday celebrations, family vacations. Each memory now poisoned. She'd invited this man into their home, trusted him with her child, built a future around his promises. The kitchen phone caught her eye, still lying where she dropped it. Through the roaring in her ears, Martha heard Linda's quiet sobs, saw Nelson's feet shifting toward the door. Her shock crystallized into something harder, colder. She lunged for the phone, fingers trembling as she punched in 3 numbers. "Mom, what are you?" Linda started. "I'm calling the police." Martha's voice came out stronger than she felt. "Nobody leaves this room." The moment Nelson lunged for the phone, something inside Martha snapped. She grabbed the nearest kitchen knife from the drying rack, its blade catching the afternoon light. "Don't you dare move." Martha put that down. Nelson raised his hands, backing toward the living room. "You're not thinking clearly?" "Not thinking clearly." A harsh laugh escaped her throat. "I'm thinking clearer than I have in 10 years. She advanced slowly, the knife steady in her grip. "You lived in my home, ate at my table, watched my daughter grow up, and all this time." Her free hand shot out, grabbing a framed photo from the counter. It showed Nelson teaching Linda to drive, both smiling at the camera. The frame shattered against the wall, glass raining down on the carpet. "All this time, you were grooming her." Linda screamed as Martha cornered Nelson against the living room wall. The knife point hovered inches from his chest. "You manipulated my baby, used her college dreams against her, made her keep your sick secret." Each accusation brought the blade closer. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't end you right now." "I took care of you both." Nelson's voice cracked with desperation. "Everything I did was for this family. Who paid for Linda's SAT prep? Who upgraded your car? Who made sure you got that promotion at work?" His words only fueled Martha's rage. The knife trembled in her white-knuckled grip. "You're trying to justify what you did by listing your expenses, like we were some kind of investment?" "She came to me," Nelson shouted, his back pressed against the wall. "That night after homecoming, she was upset about her ex-boyfriend. She needed comfort. Things just happened." Linda's voice cut through the tension. "That's a lie. You told me Mom would never believe me, said you'd make it look like I seduced you." "Shut up." Nelson's composed facade crumbled completely. "Martha, baby, think about what you're doing. Think about your future. Who's going to take care of you both if I'm gone? You really want to throw away 10 years? Martha's laugh held no humor. "Throw away? Like you threw away my daughter's innocence? Her trust? Her future?" The knife edge pressed against his shirt. "You destroyed everything the moment you touched her." "Drop the knife." Cincinnati PD. Officer Leonard Hunter's voice boomed through the apartment. He stood in the doorway and drawn, responding to neighbors' reports of screaming and breaking glass. "You don't understand." Martha's grip tightened on the knife. "This man, he hurt my daughter. He—" "Ma'am, I need you to lower the weapon. Officer Hunter maintained his professional tone while assessing the scene. A terrified teenage girl, a man against the wall, and a mother with murder in her eyes. Let's talk about this. Nelson seized the moment of distraction, shoving Martha aside and bolting toward the door. The knife clattered to the floor as Martha stumbled. Officer Hunter moved to intercept, but Nelson barreled past him into the hallway. "He's the father," Linda's voice rang out. "He got me pregnant when I was 17. He's been hurting me for over a year." Officer Hunter's expression hardened. In one fluid motion, he holstered his weapon and tackled Nelson in the hallway. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut echoed through the apartment as Martha collapsed into tears, Linda rushing to hold her mother. As this intense confrontation unfolds, we need to pause and address something important. Stories like Martha's and Linda's often remain hidden in plain sight. If this story has affected you, or if you know someone in a similar situation, remember, there's help available. We've placed domestic abuse and sexual assault hotline numbers in the description below. Share this video. It might reach someone who needs to hear they're not alone. Hit the like button and subscribe to support more content that sheds light on these crucial issues. Your engagement helps these stories reach those who need them most. Drop a heart in the comments to show support for survivors of abuse and share any resources you know that might help others in similar situations. Now, let's return to see how Officer Hunter handles this delicate situation. Officer Hunter maintained firm pressure on Nelson's restrained wrists while speaking quietly into his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 247. I need additional units and SVU at Oakwood Heights Apartments, Unit 3C. Suspect in custody, victims secure." 2 more officers arrived within minutes, securing the scene as Officer Hunter guided Martha and Linda to separate corners of the living room. He noticed Linda's protective hand over her midsection, Martha's trembling fingers, the shattered glass from family photos scattered across the floor. "I need to document everything," he explained gently, pulling out his notepad. "Miss Kerrigan, how long have you known Mr. Taylor?" 10 years. Martha whispered, watching as officers photographed the apartment. "He moved in 5 years ago." Officer Hunter nodded, his pen moving steadily. "Linda, I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell me when the abuse began. Take your time." The younger officer who'd arrived as backup stood guard over Nelson, who sat handcuffed in the kitchen chair, his earlier bravado replaced by silent resignation. Evidence markers appeared next to the dropped knife, the broken frame, the crumpled scholarship letter. "Mr. Taylor will be charged with multiple felonies," Officer Hunter explained, his tone professional but compassionate. "Sexual assault of a minor, statutory rape, continuous sexual abuse of a child. Given Linda's age when this began and his position as a household authority figure, he's facing serious prison time." He turned to face Martha directly. "The knife incident won't be held against you, given the circumstances. We understand your reaction as a mother protecting her child." He paused, ensuring his next words registered clearly. "But from this point forward, let us handle everything legally." "What about Linda's pregnancy?" Martha asked, her voice barely audible. "That's evidence," Officer Hunter replied carefully. "The medical records from today's appointment will be subpoenaed. The DNA will provide irrefutable proof of his crimes." He glanced at Linda. "However, any decisions about the pregnancy itself remain entirely yours, Linda. There are counselors and support services available whenever you're ready to discuss your options." The detective handed them both cards with victim advocacy contact information. "The DA's office has a 98% conviction rate in cases like this. Mr. Taylor won't be able to hurt anyone else's daughter." Outside the apartment, neighbors gathered as officers led Nelson toward the waiting patrol car. His white-collar professional image crumbled, suit wrinkled, hair disheveled, department store cologne mixing with nervous sweat. Officer Hunter kept a firm grip on his arm while reading his rights. "Nelson Taylor, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The officer's voice carried across the parking lot, making the charges public. "You have the right to an attorney." From their third-floor window, Linda watched her former stepfather's head duck into the police car. The same car he'd taught her to drive in now carried him away in handcuffs. Neighbors pointed and whispered, their phones recording the scene. Mrs. Tatiana from the first floor, who'd always praised Nelson's politeness, covered her mouth in shock. The patrol car's doors slammed shut. Through the window, Nelson stared straight ahead, his facade of the perfect family man finally shattered. Martha stood motionless by the kitchen counter, her hands gripping the edge where just hours ago she'd been preparing lunch. Her eyes fixed on Linda's acceptance letter, still lying crumpled on the floor, a symbol of dreams tainted but not destroyed. SVU detectives worked around her, cataloging evidence, taking photographs, their movements careful and practiced. Each flash of their cameras illuminated another memory she'd have to re-examine, another moment she'd missed the signs. Officer Hunter's words about counseling and support services echoed in her mind, but all she could focus on was Linda, her baby, sitting with a female detective. Her daughter's shoulders no longer hunched with the weight of secrets. Despite everything, relief showed in Linda's face. The relief of finally speaking truth. Martha's hands found the kitchen knife block, now empty, where she'd grabbed the weapon. In 10 years, she'd never raised a hand in violence. Yet today, she'd been ready to kill. For her daughter, she realized she was capable of anything. The thought steadied her, shaking hands. The first night without Nelson felt like waking from a decade-long nightmare. Martha and Linda checked into the Hampton Inn off Interstate 75, courtesy of the Victims Assistance Program. Their apartment, now a crime scene, stood empty as forensics teams collected evidence from Linda's bedroom, Nelson's home office, and every space he'd once claimed as his own. Detective Alexandra Miller from SVU arranged for Linda's immediate medical care beyond the initial pregnancy confirmation. "We need to document everything," she explained gently, scheduling appointments with specialists at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. "Your testimony, combined with medical evidence, will make the case airtight." Martha watched her phone fill with missed calls and messages as news spread through their social circle. Nelson's family, their mutual friends, her co-workers at Mercy General. Each notification made her flinch, knowing she'd eventually have to explain what happened. Linda's phone remained silent. She deleted all social media the moment they'd left the apartment. The hotel room's unfamiliar shadows kept both women awake that first night. They sat together on one bed, neither mentioning the empty one by the window. "Mom," Linda whispered around midnight, "I'm sorry about Johns Hopkins." "Don't." Martha pulled her daughter closer. "We'll figure something out, together." The next morning, Martha contacted Johns Hopkins admissions office. To her surprise, the dean of admissions arranged an immediate video call. After hearing their situation, she offered Linda a deferral year with guaranteed scholarship retention. "Your spot in the pre-med program will be waiting when you're ready," she assured them, her voice full of compassion. Linda started therapy 3 times a week with Dr. Rebecca Torres, a specialist in trauma counseling. The sessions, though difficult, began unlocking years of suppressed fear and manipulation. Martha attended separate counseling sessions, learning to navigate her own guilt and anger while supporting her daughter. They found a small 2-bedroom apartment across town, far from Oakwood Heights. The living room remained deliberately bare. No family photos, no memories to sort through. Instead, they started fresh. Linda painted one wall deep purple, her first independent design choice in years. Martha bought new furniture from IKEA, spending one Saturday with Linda assembling a desk for college prep materials. Most importantly, they talked. Really talked. Over late-night ice cream, during morning coffee, between therapy sessions. Each conversation rebuilt their bond, stronger than before, free from the shadows Nelson had cast over their relationship. Officer Hunter became an unexpected pillar of support, handling their case with dedication beyond standard protocol. He personally coordinated with the DA's office, ensuring Linda wouldn't have to repeat her story unnecessarily. His presence at preliminary hearings provided a steady reminder that justice was in motion. "Your strength," he told Linda during a case review, "will protect other girls. 3 more families have come forward since Nelson's arrest." He shared this information carefully, watching both women absorb the revelation that Linda wasn't the only victim, but she could be the last. When Martha worried about Nelson's release on bail, Officer Hunter arranged extra patrols around their new apartment. He connected them with a network of survivors' families, people who understood their journey because they'd walked similar paths. His business card, initially just another piece of paper in Martha's wallet, became a lifeline. A direct number to call whenever the legal process felt overwhelming. The Hamilton County Courthouse loomed large on their first day of preliminary hearings. Linda gripped her mother's hand as they passed through security, her testimony notes secure in her backpack. Assistant District Attorney Michael Ramirez met them in a private conference room, his case files spread across the table. "The evidence is overwhelming," Ramirez explained, reviewing DNA results, medical records, and digital forensics from Nelson's devices. He's facing 25 years minimum. With multiple counts and the position of trust factor, we're pushing for 40. Nelson's expensive defense attorney proposed a plea deal, 15 years with possibility of parole. Linda, finding strength in her mother's presence, refused. "I want him to face a jury," she declared. "I want everyone to know what he did." The grand jury convened the following week. Martha and Linda sat together in the witness preparation room, their matching purple ribbons pinned to their lapels, symbols of survival chosen by Linda. Through the window, Cincinnati's skyline stretched toward a future that, despite everything, still held promise. Trust within a family is precious and fragile, requiring constant vigilance to protect. Martha's story reminds us that predators often hide behind perfect facades, gaining access to victims through carefully cultivated relationships. They don't appear as monsters, they show up as trusted friends, partners, and father figures who slowly weave themselves into the fabric of family life. The most dangerous wolves don't prowl outside our doors, they sit at our dinner tables, help with homework, and tuck children into bed. They build trust over years, making themselves indispensable while plotting their betrayals. They understand that patience is their greatest weapon, and security their perfect cover. For every Martha and Linda who find the courage to speak up, countless others remain trapped in silence. The shame doesn't belong to the victims or their families. It belongs solely to those who abuse trust and manipulate love for their own desires. Breaking silence isn't betraying family, it's protecting it. Standing up isn't destroying a home, it's saving lives. No child should carry adult secrets. No parent should face the horror of discovering trusted protectors were actually predators. Our families deserve better than false security built on hollow promises. Open dialogue creates bridges that secrets can't cross. When parents establish consistent, judgment-free communication with their children, they build foundations that predators can't easily undermine. Martha and Linda's story highlights how abusers thrive in silence, using threats and manipulation to keep victims isolated. Regular family conversations shouldn't focus only on achievements and schedules. They need to include discussions about boundaries, respect, and personal safety. Children must know they'll be believed, even if their truth seems impossible. They need reassurance that love isn't conditional on keeping painful secrets. Create safe spaces for uncomfortable conversations. Listen without interruption when children share concerns about trusted adults. Watch for sudden changes in behavior or reluctance to spend time with people they once enjoyed being around. Pay attention when childhood openness transforms into guarded responses. Most importantly, maintain connections that can weather storms. Martha's greatest regret wasn't failing to spot Nelson's deception. It was letting his presence gradually distance her from Linda's daily life. When parents stay actively engaged, asking questions and really listening to the answers, they strengthen bonds that make it harder for predators to insert themselves between parent and child. Learn to recognize behaviors that often signal hidden abuse. Adult figures who insist on private time with children, excessive gift-giving or special attention to one particular child, creating situations to be alone with a minor, becoming overly involved in a child's personal life, making themselves indispensable to the family, undermining parent-child relationships through subtle manipulation, encouraging secrets, no matter how small, using guilt or threats about family stability, taking control of a child's future plans or opportunities, excessive physical contact, even if seemingly innocent, creating situations where alcohol or drugs lower inhibitions, using family loyalty to maintain silence. The most dangerous red flag is often a gut feeling that something isn't right. Martha's instincts screamed warnings long before her mind accepted the truth. Trust those instincts. Question situations that make you uncomfortable, even if you can't immediately explain why. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, help is available 24/7. Check the description. I have provided available resources you can contact. Every state has victim advocacy services offering free legal assistance, emergency housing, counseling services, support groups, medical care, educational assistance. Local law enforcement has special victims units trained to handle sensitive cases. Many hospitals have SANE, sexual assault nurse examiner programs providing specialized care. Remember, you are not alone. You deserve to be safe. It's never too late to speak up. Thank you for staying with us through this powerful story of survival and justice. If Martha and Linda's story has moved you, please take action now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to support more content that brings these important issues to light. Share this video with someone who might need to hear this message. Your share could be the lifeline someone desperately needs. Drop a purple heart in the comments to show support for survivors of family abuse, and let us know what other stories of survival you'd like us to cover. Remember to check the description below for all the helpline numbers and resources mentioned in this video. Together, we can break the silence and save lives. Don't forget to like this video and join our community of advocates fighting to protect families everywhere. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant.